Hi, everybody. So, as you all know, I still don't have the ability to live stream. So, until I get more subscribers, I'm going to have to pre record the video and then download it and upload it. So, for those of you who already have established channels, I would really appreciate it if you would give me a shout out and let people know that the Anti Nihilist has a new channel and let them know where they can find me. So, um, I'm going to be reviewing this video right now about a man who was disinherited by his father, which I'm going to analyze under the context of my upcoming book, Whose Life Is It? Without the Right to Die, You Don't Actually Own Your Life. Um, Sorry, y'all. That's not the actual title. The new title is Whose Life Is It? The Moral Debt for Life Enslavement. I guess I uploaded the wrong cover. Anyway, so y'all just disregard that. The imagery is correct, but the text is not correct. This is not the most current cover that I'm going to be using. Um, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Um, his video is called "Parents Who Disinherit Their Children." Okay, so as y'all know, my father promised me some money. He actually promised me some money as an incentive for not pulling the plug, right? Because he didn't want me to do it. He said that he was going to leave everything to me. And after his death, I found out that he actually he made the same promise to several people, right? He made the promise to my brother. He made the promise to my niece, my aunt. Um, I guess the promise was made to me first, and I think, in all honesty, he probably did intend to leave me the money, specifically because he believed that I was his biological son, and he didn't believe that my brother was his biological son. My brother did take a DNA test after his death and found out that he actually was his biological son. But I didn't want to take it under the context that he was trying to screw my brother over. And then this is the thing. They try to buy you, right? Because they don't actually want to be morally responsible, or they don't want to be held accountable for their actions, for their actual abuse, right? So what they'll do is they'll offer you money because that's a substitute for moral accountability. So take this money. Don't ever bring up anything that I did about you. And by the way, let me continue abusing you, because now that I have given you this money, this really absolves everything that I have done, and you don't have a right to bring anything up. So they think that money wipes away all sins and that you should just get over it. Um, I gave you money, so what are you complaining about, right? It's not even necessarily that they just don't care about what they did to you. They don't even care about your own, like your personal circumstances, like whatever your personal hardships are. You may be struggling with whatever your you know, in a personal relationship, you may not like your job, whatever it is. You may be depressed. They don't want to hear that shit. So what they'll do is they'll just give you some money. Here, take this money, and in exchange for this money, I don't have to listen to your problems. Now, since I gave you this money, right? Because money is supposed to fix everything. Now you have to listen to me, and you don't get to talk about your problems because I'm not interested in it. So that this is how they do it. Everything is very transactional. Um, like I said, I do think that my father intended to give me the money, but I could not. I mean, at the end of the day, he was still being abusive, right? I thought he was apologizing. he made a very blanket apology. I'm sorry, right? Without giving any specific details about what he was apologizing for. And then he just continued on with the same abusive behavior, like revisionist history, trying to change facts, like things that happened. And he's just like, I'm like, wait. You wanted me to forgive you. I forgave you. But now you're bringing up, oh shit, that I was trying not to talk about. And you're trying to twist it around to make yourself look good. I'm like, no, I was willing to let it go. But since you're bringing it up, no, what you did was actually fucked up. And so it was just that was happening constantly. And it's just like, it's not good enough that you gave them a clean slate. They want you to buy into their narrative. That is the reason that they want to have a relationship with you anyway, right? Because if you go no contact with them, then they can't use you to participate in their false narrative. So they're going to constantly bring up old stuff and then switch it around to make themselves be the hero. Even though they were really the villain, they didn't do anything wrong. They were these perfect parents, and I don't know what I did. Like, I don't know why you weren't talking to me. So, and by the way, here's this money. So, because I'm giving you this money, you have to go along with my narrative. And it's just like, no, like you can't. I mean, they do think this way. They're very transactional, especially if you have a narcissistic parent. And both of my parents thought this way, and I never realized that. Hindsight is 2020, but I didn't realize why they were always trying to push money on me. It was because money absolved them of guilt, and so if I took their money, that meant that I had to forgive them, and I had to allow them to continue abusing me. Okay, so in my context, yeah, I guess he kind of did control me from the grave because I ended up suing my aunt for the money that my father promised me. As far as I'm concerned, there was a contract. It was a verbal contract, but even if it's not in writing, there's something called what is it called when it's not in writing? Contracts that are not in writing are not enforceable if it's over a year. But if you already perform your end of it, then it's called the statute of frauds. That's under the statute of frauds, contracts are not valid if it's over a year. But if you perform your end of it, then it still is enforceable. I guess the issue would be is the abstention of the thing that I'm not allowed to talk about, the thing that got my other channel deleted, is that does that constitute proper consideration for a contract? At the very least, it is an incentive trust, right? And incentive trusts are just as enforceable as an actual contract. I think, see, this is the thing with these courts, which I have a whole chapter in my upcoming book about that even aside from the fact that the law was completely on my side, the fact that I had enough evidence for a summary judgment, and she had no defense, right? Everything was completely lined up in my favor. The law was on my side, the facts were on my side, and based on the law, I should have been entitled to recoup all the money that my father gave to her. But the judge was still uncomfortable with it because his personal view was it wasn't her fault, right? And so I mean, she offered me a small bit of it, and so I should have just taken it. I want y'all to know that these judges are biased as hell. They don't just follow the law. They bring their personal biases into the courtroom. Um, Even though she was in default, even though I filed a motion for summary judgment or an alternative for a default judgment. She was in default, and I had enough evidence for summary judgment. And what the judge did, he dismissed it for lack of subject matter jurisdiction, um, in order to evade addressing the merits of the case, right? Because it was filed in district court, right? Because district courts have I guess the primary jurisdiction. No, it wasn't. It was the I could have filed it in a probate court, but it wasn't. This wasn't in a state case because it was pursuant to a living trust, which does not go to probate. It should. I filed it in a correct court. Um, it was primarily a trust issue, but then there was a what do you call that? A pour over will. A pour over will means that property which wasn't included in the trust goes to whoever the trustee is. So there was a minor, there was like probably less than $3,000 of the estate that was a part of the probate, the pour over will. And he decided that the entire case was a probate case, and just to avoid holding her accountable and making her pay all that money back. So I spent months litigating this case, getting all this evidence, spending money, going back and forth. I had to get her served. I had to subpoena evidence from the credit union. I did all of this work, and then he dismissed it for lack of subject matter jurisdiction. Now, I could have appealed, but I already knew that there was that. I know how these courts are. These courts are biased as hell. And so I could spend all this money and continue doing it. I decided to just let it go. Because if he wasn't willing to do it, then an appellate court was not going to do it either. So, and the worst part is that I gave her an opportunity to settle. I actually made her an offer, right? I wanted to go to mediation and negotiate with her. I wasn't trying to get all of it, but I wanted a better deal than what she was offering. But after it was clear that she was going to fight it, I was going to let it go. And she decided she wanted to take it to court. And my whole thing is that you want to take it to court, fine. You want to take it out to the fullest extent, then let's go toe to toe. The law is on my side. And yet the judge still decided to help her because he knew that if he made a ruling on the merits that she was going to lose. So I guess he didn't like the fact. I guess I was too aggressive. It looked like I was a bully, but no, I was not being a bully. I gave her an opportunity to settle. I gave her an opportunity to settle for nothing. I offered her a joint settlement, and she didn't want a joint settlement. She wanted me to dismiss it unilaterally, which I didn't want to dismiss it unilaterally because that means that I could potentially be held a vexatious litigant. So if you reject my joint settlement offer, I'm not going to dismiss it unilaterally so that can be used against me later. Here's the thing. I was estranged from my father, and I'm currently estranged from my mother. In my father's case, there was never any intention in my mind to be permanently estranged from him. He was abusive, and it was taking a toll on my mental health. And so I specifically didn't want to deal with him while I wasn't doing well financially because I knew he was going to make it worse and he was going to use that against me and make me even more depressed. So in my mind, I was only going to like temporarily um, go no contact. I guess I wasn't intentionally going no contact, but none of this was conscious in my mind. My thing was I was going to temporarily not talk to him until I got back on my feet because I didn't want him to be able to rub it in my face. And so it ended up being years, but none of that was intentional. It was because he had already done it. And so I don't trust you. I don't want you to ask me questions and then you can weaponize it against me. And so he doesn't see it from my side. Narcissists, they don't care about the abuse and how it affects you. What they think is that you are trying to punish them. They feel entitled to supply. So by not talking to them, you're basically doing something malicious against them, right? Your world is supposed to revolve around them. And so by not talking to them, you are depriving them of supply that they rightfully deserve, that they're entitled to. And in the absence of that supply, they can't function properly. So they can't project all of their internal dysregulation, their low self-esteem, right? They need somebody to project it on. And so I deprived them of that. So I saved myself from years of abuse by not talking to him. And he was very resentful of that. Yeah, and so the last conversation I had with him, we went out to dinner, and basically, I didn't like the way the conversation went. I was trying to help him with his cancer treatment. I was talking about supplements and alternative treatments, and he seemed like he was completely on board with it. I didn't realize until after the fact that he was actually very upset because in his mind, I was trying to paint myself as being smarter than him. So he was very upset. Um, and then I actually had to work that night. So I didn't actually have a lot of time. I was tired and I drove 45 minutes out of my way to where he lived. And then we had dinner because I'm thinking I'm trying to save my father. And then afterwards, right, I bought all these supplements and I spent over $300 on this stuff. And then afterwards, he pulls me out into the parking lot, right? I'm going to my car. He's supposed to be going to my car. And then he wants to see what kind of car I drive. And then at first he's like all excited, like, ooh, what kind of, and then reluctantly I pointed to my car, but it was very awkward. Like what the fuck is this? I came here to save you from your cancer and you're interested in what kind of fucking car and so I felt completely objectified. And at that point, I pretty much knew that I was done with them because I know that seems like that's not a big deal, but no, that's how shallow he was. He was not there to talk about his cancer treatment. He was there to see what was going to pry into my life so he could weaponize it and then basically wilt me back into his web of abuse. And then I gave him supplements there, but then more supplements followed in the mail. And he sent me a series of text messages that basically to cuss me out for sending him some health supplements after he already agreed that he was okay with it. Right? This is the thing. It's almost like you want to have a relationship with your parents, right? But they're constantly, and I guess it cuts a little deeper when it's your parents, because anybody else you could go tell them to go fuck themselves. When it's your parents, you want to be respectful, and so they're and it's not always overt. A lot of times it's covert. They're making these subtle digs, and it does take a toll on you. And then when you say something, oh, I didn't mean anything. Oh, I was just trying to be helpful, or oh, that was a joke, right? and then you walk away feeling like shit because they they're enjoying this, by the way, at your expense. They don't actually have any empathy. They don't care about how it affects you. Um, and you're supposed to just let them have their fun. This is what I've come to realize, that they really do believe that they own you, that they believe that you exist for them, and that they are entitled to abuse you because it makes them feel good. They're not going to explicitly say that, but they do believe that they own you because they've invested in you, they raised you, they had all the, these expenses, and they invested time, which was completely transactional. But as a result of their so-called investment in you, they do think that they own you, and they think that you are supposed to be grateful and just let them do whatever they want, and you're not even supposed to defend yourself. Um, and meanwhile, if you do get depressed as a result of their abuse, then you're just crazy and you just need help, right? Never mind the fact that you would need help if you just went on your own way and stopped putting yourself in that predicament, and you were no longer abused. No, you just need help. The problem isn't me. The problem is you, because you're just crazy, right? And that's what both of my parents do. Or my mother is still alive. My father, that's what he did. They don't want you to heal, right? They don't want, because that deprives them of supply. They actually like you better. You know what? I'm going to be honest. When I was in law school and I had a promising future and everything was looking on the ups, right? I don't think that he actually liked that. Like, he actually liked me better when I failed the bar exam and I was more dependent on him. Then he could weaponize his money um, for control. So between both of them, especially my mom or ex mom, um, they both sabotaged me. I don't know that it was completely intentional, but my mom, I almost believe that it was intentional. My dad sabotaged me just because he was so damn needy, that he needed so much attention. He started arguments over bullshit when I was supposed to be studying. Um, and they don't want to take accountability for anything. And when you are wounded, when you are completely depressed and completely demoralized, they don't stop and just have empathy to say, oh, he's depressed, let me leave him alone. No, they will pounce on you, and they're still looking for more supply. So no matter how low you are, they still want more supply. So it doesn't stop, right? It took me a long time to realize what they were. Like, especially my mom, I'm like, I actually don't. Before, I used to feel bad, right? I used to feel guilty for not dealing with her, but at this point, I just don't, because now I realize that she really just has no empathy. Right. So it's a day by day thing, but it turns up being years, because at the end of the day, you realize that they didn't actually add anything to your life, right? You can't talk to them about anything because they're so selfish. At most, they might give you money, but it's so draining. It's not even worth the money. You can keep your damn money. Okay, so in my case, my father promised me the money, but he ended up giving it to my aunt, which he didn't give to my aunt in the form of a will. He gave it to her in the form of a payable. He named her as a payable on death beneficiary on his credit union account, and so the money automatically went to her, and it doesn't have to go through probate. And so, if it had gone through probate, I probably could have gotten it back. But courts are reluctant to spend money or to require somebody to pay restitution for money that was given to them because on one hand it wasn't her fault, but at the same time she hadn't noticed. It's not like I waited. I sued her immediately. I tried to get a preliminary injunction to stop the money from being transferred to her account. So I did everything. This is the part that really frustrates me because they will the devil talk of these damn courts. When I filed a motion for preliminary judgment, preliminary injunction, what the judge told me was that I was not entitled to a preliminary injunction because I would not suffer a permanent injury. So basically, even if I didn't get it, I could still recover the money from her, right? Because money is not irreparable. Like there's certain things that are irreparable, like some things that have sentimental value, some things that are just one of a kind. But money and the court's view is reparable, right? Never mind the fact that once she got the money, I knew she was going to spend it. And then after the fact, in hindsight, once she has spent the money, now they don't want to pay, they don't want to order restitution because it's going to impose a hardship on her. But wait a minute, you just told me that money was reputable, so or repairable. Like I could be fully compensated for it, right? But now all of a sudden you don't want to use your power to do the right thing because it's going to. This is the part that I just don't like about courts, but they engage in this devil talk. It's just they don't actually have to be held accountable because they are protected with absolute immunity. So they completely screw you over, and then there's no consequence for it. Right. My father said that to me too. This is going to be yours. This house was going, even like days before he died, he specifically said that, I was the oldest. It was my responsibility to create generational wealth. He wanted me to protect his house, to make sure that nobody else got it, right? All the while he knew that he had already designated my aunt as the payable and death beneficiary. That's the thing. It's not about the money. It's the fact that they actually had the ability to help you and they didn't. And my father actually had the ability to help me even when he was alive. Even like when I didn't pass the bar exam, he had money. He could have helped me to retake the bar exam, to get a tutor, whatever. He gave my aunt $20,000 to start a real estate business. She completely screwed it over and didn't pay him back. But he didn't help me. So basically, everything was transactional. If he wasn't getting what he wanted out of me, he was basically going to leave me for dead. So I already knew that. And so I guess I kind of accepted it. And then when he was on his deathbed, I reconnected, and then he basically got my hopes up again that we were on good terms, and he was actually going to do right by me. And then he fucked me all over again. Like, I swear, if I could bring him back from the grave and actually hold him accountable, I absolutely would. But I didn't find out what he did until after he was already gone. And my aunt didn't. She wasn't inclined to do the right thing. She just like, oh well, technically I'm the beneficiary, so it's my money. It's like I spent a lifetime earning that money, tolerating his abuse. What did you do? That's the thing. It's a whole role reversal because they're supposed to be the parents, right? And they're only parents in the sense that they provide food, clothing, shelter, right? They have money, and they will perform the provision component of it. But when it comes to everything else, the nurturing, the encouragement, and all that, it's a complete role reversal. It's like you're the parent. You're they're not responsible for developing you into a complete human being. Um, they think that you're responsible for developing them. Like you're supposed to fix them. And so everything else, any emotional need that you need, any nurturing, any even wisdom, any of that, it's a complete role reversal. You're the parent and they're the child. And it's almost like they get to make up for their lost childhood because they get to weaponize their money to vicariously force their parent to be a good parent through their children. So you're basically the de facto parent, and they get to abuse parenting out of you, even though you're the actual child. Okay, I guess I'm going to stop it at this point, and I'm going to get into these charts for my upcoming book. So, the moral debt for life enslavement, right? Life enslavers, life enslavers create persons who provide continuous benefit to the life enslavers. These benefits include meaning, purpose, emotional satisfaction, social status, legacy, and existential validation, right? So even if you are estranged from your father, you're still carrying his last name. You still were subjected to 18 years of abject slavery, right? You still um, provided purpose for this person's life, right? It doesn't matter that they weren't able to control you to the extent that they wanted to be able to control you for the short period that you were estranged. They still created a slave and they benefited from your existence. So the persons who were created never agreed to provide these benefits. Life enslavers extract these benefits without providing compensation, right? Because they think that you owe them even though they created you. This is a role reversal. Like you didn't ask for any of this shit. You don't have anything to be grateful for. I'm going to get to another chart in a second, but everything that they did was transaction. They wanted a child to enslave to enrich their lives, right? So one party benefits from another without consent and without compensation. This constitutes unjust enrichment. Unjust enrichment creates a moral obligation to provide restitution. Therefore, life enslavers owe a moral debt for life enslavement to those who they create. Um, I guess I'm going to briefly go over this chart, the Life Slaves Ledger, which is going to be in my upcoming book. The cost imposed, physical, daily maintenance, deterioration, death, right? They impose a death sentence on you. So there is no way they can compensate you for that. They impose an economic burden on you that you have to incur 80,000 plus in forced labor, psychological, consciousness, existential dread, temporal, the daily cost of maintaining your life, social, forced relationships, you're being forced into a family against your consent, um, emotional labor, both uh, familiar labor and societal. They created a full human being. They didn't just create a child. Systemic unjust laws, rights without remedies, identity, you're carrying your father's last name, family burdens, the existential burden of meaninglessness with no solution, compensation received, you didn't receive any compensation from your parent. Your life enslavers may be adequate parent, what I call competent parenting. I guess I need to adjust that. They're dead, the debt is uncollected. You know, I'm going to get into the dual breach with the state, but I'm not going to talk about that right now from society. And then at the bottom line is that you got screwed. Now, discharging the moral debt for life enslavement, right? The moral debt for life enslavement is absolute, right? Because and it's non-transferable. It belongs to the individual life slave who was created. So the first requirement for discharging the MDLE, competent parenting, right? Basic needs, food, shelter, clothing, medical, education, life skills for basically being self-sufficient, no severe abuse, neglect, or exploitation. This does not discharge the debt. It doesn't matter that you're 18. This is the minimum. This is the bare minimum, competent parenting. Because if they didn't provide this, then it basically, the moral debt still continues, even in adulthood. If you were not a sufficient parent and you didn't provide basic skills for the child to be self-sufficient, then you don't even get to the second step. Respect for autonomy. Recognize the child as an independent agent, no coercion, manipulation, or guilt. Accept the right to opt out of existence. You have a right to opt out of an involuntary existence, and your parent does not have a moral right to interfere with that, right? Acknowledge that the debt is owed and the child owes nothing. Mandatory inheritance, 50% of the estate to the children, right? And this is provided that the life enslaver is married. But if the life enslaver is not married, then the life slaves should get 100% of the estate, and it should be divided equally among the life slaves. So you don't have a right to disinherit your children, right? This is a debt that you voluntarily assume. And it's not dischargeable. It's not dischargeable unilaterally. It's only dischargeable by the life slaves. Explicit consent from all children. It must be explicit, informed, freely given, cannot be assumed, implied, or coerced. Each child is a separate creditor. So if one child wants to say, "Oh, I think that you don't owe me anything," fine, you don't get your cut, but the other children they're entitled to the rest of it, or they're entitled. So if it was four of them, and then you decide you don't want anything, then the other three gets split three ways instead of four. All children are equally entitled to the full debt, to the extent that there aren't any other creditors. Unanimous consent. In order to be relieved of any moral debt, then all of them have to consent to it. One of them can give consent, but it doesn't discharge the life slave. And the primary goal of discharge is basically, well, I'm not going to talk about that right now. You guys are going to have to read the book, but you're entitled to an inheritance, and a life enslaver does not have the right to opt out. Even if you are an adult, the life enslaver has a moral duty to leave you an inheritance. So they don't get to opt out. The only people who get to opt out are those who don't have children. And if the life enslaver wants to opt out, then they have to get consent from all the children. In order to opt out or to have the debt discharged, you have to get consent from all surviving children. If not, the debt remains. So that is it in a nutshell. I'm going to be doing more content, but at the same time, I can't do any live streams until I get at least 50 subscribers. So those of you who have content and you're a content creator, you have a larger platform, please give me a shout out, because I really need to get at least 50 subscribers so I can start doing live streams again.